how different the current situation from the real doom zone, whether you didn't like that word, right? I have always had that conversation with you. You didn't like the word doom zone. You believe that it was not appropriate for what's currently happening. We'll be talking about that. But in the interim, we should be able to get to government to tell us exactly what's happening, what are they doing to fix the problem, and if it can be fixed at all, or is completely out of their control, and we just have to gear up. Already we understand there's a lot of problem, even on the international market, in the UK, in the US, countries already reporting fuel price hikes. Are we alone in this quest? And what are we doing differently in this country? But before I go to government, I think we can start in studio. Doc, you're welcome once again.
Thank you.
It's been some time since we had a conversation on what's happening on the energy front.
Sure.
To you, you are now a watcher sitting in parliament and watching from afar, not an active player on the field, deciding what should happen. Are these familiar times to you?
Yes, they are familiar times to me. Let's not forget, I was the first chief executive of BOST.
Yeah.
At the time, BOST was the quasi-regulator for the petroleum downstream.
Okay.
And therefore, I handled petroleum issues. I was also a deputy minister in charge of petroleum under Professor Mills before going to Petroleum Commission. And therefore, this is familiar territory. And what most people don't know is that I grew up at the pump front.
I see.
My father has had a filling station, now a Goyo filling station since 1969, or 69, 72, thereabouts. So I grew up at the fuel front. So this is, we are not in unfamiliar territory, we are in familiar territory.
I want to know whether government agrees with you on that point, but we've been joined by Deputy Minister of Energy, Andrew Ejapa Mesa. Welcome, Honorable, to UPfront.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here. Greetings to your listeners and viewers, and of course, my senior brother, Nadoko.
Now, let's draw down to the point. Why are we having the recent hikes? We know that there is this particular window. Every 2 weeks, there's a review of the pricing. But what's accounting for anybody seeing the 7.99 on girls' tap at the pump?
I guess that this is a conversation that we can have devoid of the usual politicking. And knowing my senior brother from Nadonko, I'm sure that he will through that line so that we deal with the realities on the ground. And like he himself confirmed, this is not unfamiliar territory, because I believe that at the time that the decision was taken to do full deregulation of the petroleum sector, he was in government. And there was a rationale why the decision was taken to take out government control, or apart from premix and RFO, deregulate the remaining products on the market. You recall that between 2007 and 2008, when President Kufuor was in government, fuel prices rose to above $130 per barrel. That then led to huge debts that were accumulated in the petroleum sector. Fast forward 2015, because then government of the NDC then took a decision that because of the experiences of the past, where government then had to subsidize for all the costs that were attendant with the pricing increases, it was important for us to, as it were, take out government involvement in the petroleum sector, and hence the deregulated market, which then led to a certain formula that was developed that then informs what the price at the pump at every point is. Just so that we have some element of oversight. A 2-week window, which is called a pricing window, was developed, which then allows the market players under the oversight of the NPA to, as it were, indicate the price that the product would be sold for the window based on certain parameters, including the price of crude at the market, at the world market, and of course, exchange rates, and then again, the taxes and levies and the margins that are also part of the price build-up. And so that's why the 2-week window regime was introduced to ensure that at least it is not full deregulation, if you like. That is to say, there is no oversight in terms of how the prices are set, but rather there's some oversight, from the NPA to monitor what it is that the market players do on a 2-week cycle basis. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. No, you are just concluding on the point about where we have come from, especially with our pricing regime. I
Yes.
think that's, if you wanted to wrap up on that point before I ask the next question, which quite brief
Yes,
though.
yes, I did indeed conclude by saying that,
Okay.
that's why the 2-week cycle was imposed, or if you like, introduced, just so that the market players are not the only ones who then, in an unbridled manner, set the price.
Brilliant.
But they do so under the supervision of the NPA.
All right, we are being told that the world crude prices are likely to continue on the ascendancy and the increases would happen. Are we expecting that fuel price would break the 8 anytime soon? It's at the verge of doing so.
It's funny how you link it to breaking the 8. Of course, I was reading an article on Sky News only a short while ago, and clearly the reason that is attributable to the price increases at the pump, which essentially is a global phenomenon, is the Ukraine-Russia problem.
Okay.
That is largely influencing how the demand and, of course, the supply, and as a consequence, the price is. I know that there's some diplomatic measures that are being taken to ensure that it doesn't degenerate into a war situation. Because if we get there, then obviously nobody can predict how the price would behave. Already we are hearing of shortages in neighboring Nigeria. So it's important that for us as a government, we focus on fuel security. Okay. But yes, if the issues that then impact the price is not resolved, which largely is not within our control, I agree. And people have said that the exchange rate, which is also a function of what the price at the pumps here in Ghana is, if Bank of Ghana, for instance, introduces some measures that then leads to reserving most of our forex need to the BIDEX, that's the importers of the petroleum product. That could help with respect to the control of the forex side. But that is only an aspect of what informs the price, which predominantly is the price of crude on the market. Because if you look at the proportion, I'm not sure the forex bit is significant enough, even though it has a bearing on what it is that the price at the pump.
I see. It's predominantly the crude price worldwide. That's the problem. You
Absolutely.
say the forex bit is not so much of a major contributory factor. It appears.
It is, but I'm saying that if you look at the price, obviously, if we were talking about a $60 price per barrel, the exchange rate movement will not lead to the escalated prices that we are seeing at this point. And yes, it has a bearing, but the significant contributor of the price build-up is the exchange, is the price of crude on the market.
So forgive me, but what's government forecasting? What currently are you looking at? What are your plans? Which pricing range will be bearable for you, and which pricing range will be so unbearable that you have to step in and regulate things in other ways?
It's a real difficulty, and indeed, all the conversations that I'm having, obviously, and Dr. Conrad Okowo attests that the Ministry of Energy, our role is really to ensure that the commodities are available and, of course, affordable to the extent that the NPA, and the law allows us to, if you like, introduce, for instance, the PSRL when the need arises, okay, to try and stabilize the price.
Okay.
But obviously, the law was fashioned in such a way that the PSRL receipt itself is used to pay for subsidies on premix and RFO. And so if it's suspended, for example, as was done in November through to January, that fund was getting depleted. And so questions then arose as to how those subsidies on premix and RFO was going to be paid going forward. Obviously, resources are not available to pay subsidies anymore.
I get you.
That was why it had to be reintroduced. So that fund can also build up to meet that need for the subsidies to our fisher folk and also some industrial consumers of that product. So it's really difficult from where I sit to make a prediction as to obviously if it is lower, then the Ghanaian populace is happy.
Yeah,
and I'm happy if the Ghanaian populace is happy. So the lower the price,
I get you.
At the pump, the comfortable I am. But higher the price, then it makes me uncomfortable. It makes the government uncomfortable. And questions then ought to begin to be asked as to whether indeed the suggestions that people are making. I hear COPEC that, look, you are making some gains on the export of crude side. And so why are you not then using that flow to, if you like, cushion consumers? I don't want to use the word subsidize, okay? But then again, you look at the total revenue envelope. Yes, the projected flows from crude as a result of the increases on the global market is going up. But we are already running a deficit financing budget, which government is even looking to introduce a new tax handle to try and shore up. And so the question is, do you then use that fund to offset and cushion consumers so you create a bigger gap that you have to then go to the market to go and borrow to fill? So those are conversations that we can have. And that's why I said that knowing Dr. Komna Donko, he will stay the line of non-political so that we can have a dispassionate conversation devoid of the usual petrol price politicking.
I have a couple of questions, though. Yes, Honorable, I may have to legitimately intervene here. Forgive me. I have a couple of questions, though. First, there is a question about in November, when we were suspending the price stabilization and recovery levy, how much had been accrued into its coffers? Can you tell us? And how much is left as of the time that we were reinstating it?
Well, I can tell you that as of January 14th, okay, there was only about 42 million that was in the account. And that in itself was not sufficient to pay for the monthly outflow of about 52 or 58. Okay, and so that's what informed. But the Ministry of Finance, I recall, sometime in November or thereabout, put out a full detail on the accounting. And if you give me a minute, I can pull the information from my phone so I can share it with your listeners. The truth of the matter is that what goes into that fund is in the region of about 36 or so million per month, okay, average. But the outflow in itself is more than that, okay? And so it is the accumulation that then allows government to be able to pay. In fact, I think that the inflow is slightly higher than the outflow, okay? And so at every point that you suspend, then what it is that you've accumulated is what is used to pay for the month that the suspension is in place. And over the period, that mechanism has been deployed by the NPA to ensure that the prices were relatively stable or that the impact, okay, was not felt by the consumers at the market. And there's an analysis of the entire fund between the time that it was set up and date. And like I said, as of January 14th of 2022, what informed the recommendation not to continue the suspension was that the fund amount that was remaining was not sufficient to even pay for the January bill. And
so as we speak,
a reinstatement, yeah.
So as we speak, we should not expect that the price stabilization and recovery levy will be suspended again anytime soon.
Well, it depends on how much goes into the fund, okay, and if it accumulates sufficient enough funds. Because the truth of the matter is that it's all a question of volume. Okay.
Yeah, but I get you. But you just told me that now the amount in there is not even enough to continue what was the case before we suspended it. So I'm asking whether we know the number of months we are looking at, or it's not going to happen anytime soon.
No, I'm not in a position to confirm now, but I'm saying that
I get you. Yeah,
that decision is always taken based on a recommendation from the MPA.
There's a second question. You hinted at that. Some are saying that the increase on the world price should be enough cushion for us, and we should make sure that we get enough money for that to cushion the people. You slightly hinted about a debate. Has government taken a decision on whether or not it will listen to those who are calling on you to...
Raymond, the point that I made was that, you see, all the petroleum revenue receipts go into a certain account that has a formula for distribution. Okay? Now, any incremental, okay, obviously, is revenue to the state, part of the total revenue envelope. That in itself is not sufficient to meet the total expenditure envelope of government. And so we borrow to top up. Okay? And so if the question is that because your inflows is increasing, which then means that the bridge between your debt and the amount that you actually have is then narrowing, don't narrow that gap so you borrow less, but rather keep the debt as it is and use the excess revenue that you are getting to pay subsidies on cushion consumers. That is a debate that we have to have. And I think that it's a useful conversation that we must engage in. I don't think that is the best route to go, because obviously that then means that our debt burden will not, under any circumstances, be brought under control. Okay? And so windfalls like this potentially may help in realigning our finances in a manner that then allows us to then have some space and not borrow more or reduce the extent of borrowing that government would ordinarily do. And indeed, if you look at the PIAC report for 2021, okay, you will see clearly that the revenues that came in were distributed in accordance with the formula that is contained in the Petroleum Revenue Management Act.
My final question to you, sorry, yes, because I'm wrapping up with you on this one. My final question to you is, to the consumer listening to us, as we are at the brink of breaking the 8 when it comes to fuel prices, is government going to intervene anytime soon and bring some relief to the consumers?
Well, I hope, and to be very straightforward with you, okay, I'm not in a position at this point to indicate whether government would intervene or not. But like happened in the past, okay, government will have to take a decision one way or the other to, and really there's been no parameter that has been set.
Okay,
then,
but
for example,
as we speak, government is not discussing that. Is government already putting options on the table?
If you allow me,
ministry speaking to the finance ministry? Oh, so yes, I get you. Forgive me.
Yes, I'm saying that we've not set out a parameter to say that at every point where the price of crude, for example, hits $100 per barrel or exceeds that, government as a policy should take whatever incremental figure and pay for it. Okay? And so it's useful that we have the conversation so that we can make a determination whether we all as a nation are agreeable to the need for us to cap the amount at which we cannot continue to pass the entirety of the cost to the consumer and find other alternative means to pay for same,
Okay.
or that we allow the market forces as they are to operate. And unfortunately, I'm not in a position to make that determination.
Is there a point government to make a certain decision? Is there a point in time?
Well, I suspect that the conversation having started, the price movement clearly being manifest for government's attention. If we get to the point where it becomes imperative that government has to take some steps, that would be done. But like I said, as we speak, I'm not in a position to make that determination at this point. Yeah.
I'm grateful for your time. The Honorable Deputy Minister for Energy there is Andrew Ejapa Mercer. And I'm also grateful for your patience in studio here. A man who previously was the one who had to answer all these questions about, do you envy those who are currently in office now with the current pricing range and all of that?
No, I don't envy them.
It's a difficult task, isn't it?
Yes, unfortunately, my sympathies are not also with them.
Oh, really?
Because of previous comments. And that is why
you're not a forgiving kind, are you?
No, that is where I agree with him that it is high time we took this out of the political arena and then discuss this in a professional way that enhances the national good. Once you make too many political statements, political capital, and then on your watch of duty, you face this problem. The sympathy that you ought to would have ordinarily gotten from the public isn't there. And that is why people in the public arena must be a bit more careful.
Okay, but the point I want to raise now is crude seems to be our biggest headache now. On one hand, we don't control the pricing. On the other hand, government says we put in place a deregulator system which prices are supposed to roll over to the people, even though there's a 2-week window that we work with. There is a huge cry from the public about unbearable happenings in the economy recently. What do you think government should do immediately? First, do you agree that government cannot, in essence, control the pricing as we speak?
No, governments cannot control the international price.
Yes.
But government can do something about the domestic price. But let me also state this. It is not just the price of crude.
Who introduced deregulation?
Excuse me. It's not just the price of crude.
Okay.
There's also seasonality in this business.
Okay, yes, of course.
Because we are in winter, prices usually go up in winter. And prices go up higher for what we call white products than for crude necessarily.
Okay.
White products are the finished products.
Okay.
So there is that cyclical period that we also have to take cognizance of. But again, it is not just a question of, as my honorable colleague alluded to, there are two major factors. One is the landed cost of the product that we call import parity or ex-refinery. And the other is the cedi dollar relationship because pricing is in dollar. In dollar terms, we have had a deterioration of the dollar.
Yeah.
And we cannot wish that away. That is impactful. It's made some impact. Then the second issue is the import parity price. And if you look at our pricing, let me give you a good example. Total operates in both Ghana and in Togo.
Yeah.
In Togo, Essence, which we call gasoline, is selling for under 6 cedis, equivalent of under 6 cedis. In Ghana, we are indeed the maximum ex-refinery allowed is 8.010. That's the maximum allowed.
Okay, so already we are
in the range. It's just that all the oil marketing companies have shied away
from the 8.
From the 8. They don't want to be accused of breaking the 8, probably, at this time. But the real problem is that, yes, we have ex-refinery or import parity, but we also have taxes and levies. And that is where the Ghanaian state has the ability to ameliorate the hardship, at least until the cycle comes back to normality. I'm saying this because if you look at the elements of the price buildup, I can read a few to you. We have the energy recovery levy, we have the road fund levy, we have the energy fund levy, we have price stabilization recovery levy, we have the sanitation and pollution levy, we have the energy sector recovery levy, we have the special petroleum tax, we have the primary distributors margin, and then the other market-related margins. But at least there are 5-6 levies that the Ghanaian state has control over. And that is important.
But is it true that we really have control over it?
Over our levies, yes, we do.
On one hand, for example,
excuse me.
The ESLA bonds.
Excuse me.
Energy.
Let me develop the argument. These are levies imposed by the Ghanaian state through the Ghanaian parliament. Okay. Are we saying we don't have control over our levies and taxes? We do.
Of course, that's why we suspended the price stabilization and recovery.
Excuse me, the price stabilization and recovery. I can tell you, for example, on gasoline, it's 16 pesos.
Yeah.
On gasoline, which we call petrol. Mm-hmm. But there is also a grave misunderstanding of the price stabilization levy, and that also leads to confusion. The price stabilization levy, according to Act 899, which is the Energy Sector Levies Act, has 3 purposes. We are only concerned about one. The first one is a buffer for under-recovery. It's to be used in paying under-recoveries.
What does that mean? To the ordinary person, what does that mean?
Yes, when oil marketing companies bring in products to the market, and for whatever reason, the window is either suspended or made inoperative, or for some reason the Ghanaian state says, let's keep prices as they are. Okay. That's what we call under-recovery. Okay. So this tax is to enable the state pay for that under-recovery. That's a cost. There is also the stabilization of prices. How much is the levy? How much goes into under-recovery? So depending on the level of under-recovery, there will be very little for stabilization of prices. Then the third use is to subsidize premix and residual fuel oil, RFO. Mm-hmm. So 2 are immediate, under-recovery and subsidization of premix and RFO.
Is that all happening automatically?
They have to happen. And when they do, what is left for stabilization isn't much.
Okay.
So because of the name, it creates the impression that that whole fund is totally for stabilization. Indeed, in a conversation with MPA, I have suggested that appropriate and they should find a new name so that it does not mislead people into that. Yes, the Ghanaian state has responsibility. Fortunately, the argument is going to be that if the state reduces, the government reduces the taxes and levies, those that it controls, if either eliminates them or reduces them, there's going to be a deficit, a fiscal deficit. In terms of taxes, the tax revenue will drop. Mm-hmm. Yes, that is one scenario.
But that's legitimate, right?
It could have been legitimate.
No, it could have been.
Yes, it could have been legitimate. However, we are a net exporter of crude. And if you look at the budget, we use the $52, $54 benchmark for our budgetary purposes. And therefore, if we are selling today in the upper 80s and the lower 90s, there's a windfall. So if the state is removing and not saying subsidizing, in reducing some of the taxes, if the state loses some revenue, there is also a windfall elsewhere that should fill the void. And this is judgment governments have always made since the Fourth Republic.
But you had this response to that, right?
No, President Kufuor's time, that same judgment was made. At that time, we didn't even have crude. Professor Atamelse's time, that same judgment is made. That same judgment was made, and in John Mohammed's time, that same judgment is made, and that is why it's cyclical. When we have this period, these peaks, fortunately, we also have peak revenues elsewhere, far and above what we had budgeted for. So there is a windfall. You see, when prices go very high, the effect is not just on the revenue side. The effect is on the macroeconomy. Food prices go up, the cost of production goes up, and we become uncompetitive, especially in our sub-region. And that was why I cited the example of Total operating in two sisterly countries, in Ghana and Togo. In Togo, the price of essence, which we call gasoline, is less than 6 cedis equivalent. In Ghana, it's hitting 8.
8 cedi.
The difference is the level of taxes and levies we impose on our products. And therefore, in hard times like this, it's been done in the past. The state should take a second look at some of the levies.
Did the NDC do that?
Yes, the NDC did that in the past. Indeed, President Kufuor's regime did that in the past. And that's why I'm saying we are not in an unknown territory. This is a territory we've been there before.
But did it not only lead to accumulation of debt? The minister referenced that.
Not necessarily. In Kufuor's time, the difference was that we didn't have crude oil.
Okay, it makes sense.
Yeah. Now that we have crude oil and we have a bonanza because of the figure we use for our budgeting, now that we have a windfall, it will make sense to reduce the revenue we are making from the ex-pump, and the windfall will make up for that difference. The benefit is that we tame inflation. One of the biggest influences of inflation is petroleum pricing. Currently, the transport sector, private transport sector, are proposing that they're going to come up with a 30%
increase.
That 30%...
That's been discussed with government.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying they are proposing.
Yeah.
A 30%. That 30% will impact on food prices. Remember, very little food is produced in Accra or the urban areas. Food has to be transported. So it will, once transport fares go high, it will impact on food prices. It will also impact on even the cost of doing business.
And when food prices go high, it also affects inflation.
It affects inflation. Then there is a spiral wage demand because of cost of living. And therefore, if we can prevent that, and all that impacts negatively on economic growth.
That's true.
So if we can prevent that by using part of the overflow, part of the windfall we are getting, not to subsidize, but to make up for any decreased revenue that will come as pump, I think we'll be doing this country and the economy a favor.
It means almost like we are suspending the deregulator system, aren't we?
No, we are not. It's still deregulated. I've just told you,
yes,
name the number of taxes. These taxes are not part of deregulation.
I get your point. My only point here is that would it not be we going back to Parliament to seek to pass new laws to change the taxes that are on board?
How long will it take to reduce taxes? We are not introducing. It's easier when it's more difficult when you're introducing new taxes.
Is this not compounded by the ESLA bond? You remember that some part of these taxes have already, they are in a bond of a sort.
Yes, that is one tax.
Yeah.
One out of a lot. That we are compromised because we have collateralized that.
Yes, so we can't add it.
So on that, yeah, we are compromised. But even then, we can look at how much is the flow a month or on a monthly basis. So remember, this is cyclical. and this is likely to be short-term. And in previous dispensations, what we have done is to reduce taxes during the peaks. And when prices start coming down, you reintroduce the taxes.
Like we did with the price stabilization recovery levy recently.
Precisely. Except that one tax in isolation is relatively insignificant.
So we should do more. If you go through the list you went through,
yes,
which other ones should we suspend? Road fund?
I'm not saying suspend. We can reduce.
Oh, reduce it?
Yes, reduce the quantum.
Well, I mean, that's an alternative though.
Yes, I'm not saying suspend.
Not equally insignificant.
No, they wouldn't. You see, taxes, levies, and margins at any one time constitute between 30 to 48% of what you pay at the pump front.
Really?
Yes. At any one time. There are other margins that we can't touch, and so I didn't mention the marketer's margin, the boost margin.
Not government's own.
That's not government's own. I'm talking of what is within the remit of government. That, first of all, it signals a confidence in governance that during peaks, the state has the ability not to disturb the regulation, but to reduce the amount of taxes and levies the state imposes.
And that will not be undue interference in the marketing structure.
It wouldn't, because it does not affect the structure. No. It does not affect. It's numbers we put into the formula.
Yeah.
So we are reviewing the numbers that we have the capacity to review. Those we don't have the capacity to review, we don't touch.
I will come to you to tell me exactly which taxes you think should be reviewed.
Yeah.
Previously, there's been a talk about some examples on the table. The response from government has been, we will still have a difficulty with our current situation fiscally. But we'll take a break here. When we come back, my guest, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, and you heard earlier the Deputy Minister of Energy talking about what we can do, what we cannot do, and the debate we should be having. After the break, we'll continue with exactly what should be done immediately to give you more comfort. Back to our front. My name is Raymond Akwa. My guest in studio, and you heard on the phone line earlier in the conversation, Deputy Minister of Energy, the very gentleman Ejapa Mesa Andrew, on the state of fuel prices. The fuel price, which is at 7.9 per litre, which is creating concerns about whether or not it will break the 8 anytime soon and hit a very serious mark for many people. Dr. Kwabena Donkor, in studio with me, has been explaining to us why we should intervene. And that intervention should be quick so that we can bring some relief to the people. But also to save the economy is another point he makes on that level. Because of the inflation and the other impacts that all of this would have, or not just the cost of food prices and the other things that you don't want. The undesirable elements of having the fuel price go high is what he's talking about. If we were on the point where you were proposing that we should scale back taxes, use the excess money we've gotten from the crude we sell, because we are also part of sometimes we forget, we are not OPEC yet, but we are also part of the countries that are producing oil, that when we get the money from it, because we targeted around 50, 60, and we are now getting to 80, 90, we sure should be able to use the money to not necessarily subsidize, but you said cushion the people some way, somehow. I was asking specifically, so that we drill down to the point, which taxes, because we've been here before and government has raised a lot of concerns about debt issues, which specific taxes should be removed, reduced, so that we can bring that kind of relief we are talking about? And this is almost asking you, if you were energy minister today, what would you be doing differently?
Let me make this clarification. It is not the call of the energy minister. Indeed, when you...
The taxes part,
yes, it's not the call of the
finance ministry.
It's the finance ministry.
But a proposal...
So that is where I sympathize with my colleague, Deputy Minister for Energy. This question should be directed really at the finance ministry. I get you,
but there's a point where we understood the minister says, I have studied all the proposals and I was speaking to the finance ministry. When it came to the price stabilization recovery levy, that's what they told us.
Let me give you an example. The special petroleum tax on gasoline, on petrol, or which we also call premium, is 46 pesos per litre. It is 39 on diesel or gas oil. This tax in the past has been removed and reintroduced depending on the peak.
Okay.
That's one example that has been used. If you take our price stabilization levy, we have a sanitation and pollution levy.
Yeah. Well, I don't like the look on your face. I say we should take it off.
At this time, we either take it off or reduce it.
Okay.
For me, I don't also want fiscal irresponsibility.
That's what.
I don't want fiscal irresponsibility.
That's what the balance is required.
Yes, and that what is the overflow we're getting from upstream? We are averaging about 200 barrels per stream day. What is our consumption? And therefore, the net, what is the extra revenue coming in? We can then use that revenue, look at that quantum, and look at by how much we can reduce, if not temporarily take away some taxes to create the necessary equilibrium. You see, in periods like this, when we reduce taxes, we are kickstarting the economy. And that is why I'm so careful about the word subsidize. Okay. We will not be subsidizing. We'll just be reducing the taxes. We subsidize when we pay less than the cost of production.
Okay. Oh, yeah. But in this case, there's money for it.
Yes. When we pay less than the cost of production, how much it should cost landed with the distributors' margins. If we charge anything less than that, then we are subsidizing. But we are not, because of the taxes and levies that go to the treasury. We can temporarily reduce those level of taxes and link the reduction to how much we are of an overflow we are getting. It is something that can be done in a day or two if government is so minded. But the signal is that it is a temporary measure to give an economic boost to the economy. High fuel prices do not help the economy.
Deep within your heart, did you support the Energy Sector Levies Act?
Yes, at the time, yes.
Is it still legitimately right today?
At the time we introduced it, and I was in cabinet, it had a sunset clause.
Yes, it's true. But this has been extended for God knows how long.
They've removed the sunset clause. Because it was purposely for a 5-year period.
At the time that the prices
Yes, because we had a certain quantum of debt that we needed to kick off our books as a nation.
Yeah.
And by calculation, we realized that that accumulation over the period will wipe out that debt. The expectation
so
is
not
that
a contradictory position you are taking today.
No. The expectation.
Because some will think that you can't introduce taxes and later access to remove it because you're not in government.
No. Listen. I want you to get me clear. I am not just saying remove the taxes. I'm saying that, yes, the period we are in, and this has been done before.
Okay.
There are historical antecedents to this under MPP and under NDC.
Okay.
That when we get to periods such as this, we reduce or remove taxes, and then when prices start coming down, we reintroduce.
Why do you think government's not doing it now?
Well, I can't speak for government.
Because for some reason, I'm sure that there are smart people like you in government too, who can read these numbers and see this is what we should be doing. Why are they not doing it?
It takes political will, and of course, the orientation of each government may be different.
I don't understand that.
Each government might have its priorities. For me, kickstarting the Ghanaian economy, getting industry to work. When industry is working and working well, that will generate more taxes, more revenue for the state.
More likely, more jobs.
More jobs, more. So getting that to work, it's more important than just revenue streams. Because it's like the egg.
That's also what Gabe says, right? Gabe says that they are more interested in making sure that we get the industries back on their feet. They are interested in making sure that, in fact, that's why they are even introducing taxes to kickstart some of these options.
No, if you want industry back on its feet, you don't overburden industry with taxes, do you?
Yes, you don't at all. But that's, if this is overburdening, that's the point.
Yes. And as you see, this is not the norm.
Yeah.
In the last 5 years, the norm has not been to have oil prices in the upper 80s and the 90s. It's not the norm.
That's true.
A lot of this is coming out of, one, the energy transition.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot of majors have reduced investment, and that has global impact. But more importantly, there's also global security issues. And anytime there are global security uncertainties, it impacts on the price of oil, particularly when Russia is a major oil producer.
Okay. There's a question, though, on this point. You are in Parliament, very vociferous ranking member on the Employment Committee. You should be very interested in pushing this agenda.
I'm a member of the Mines and Energy Committee.
Yes. In fact,
and a past chairman.
In fact, sometimes I confuse you to be ranking member of that committee too. So I didn't want to.
You can't rank more than one
committee. Yes. But the point I want to ask here is that why are you not pushing this on the floor of Parliament? Why are you not dragging the minister to the floor to come and tell us exactly why he's not considering this option? That's even the finance minister in this case.
Yes.
Why is your agenda not to push it? Why are you sitting quiet for people in this republic to suffer when you know that this can be done?
I don't think we are sitting quiet. We have issued a statement. The minority has issued a statement on these high prices. We are putting ideas across. I am here discussing it. And
but you're not being hard enough. You are not exploring the options that comes with you defending the ordinary people of this country by asking the minister, come and dictate to us why is this not an option you are putting on the table?
Well, when e-levy has taken most of our energy.
I get your point.
E-levy has taken most of our energy, so much so that we are even oblivious of the e-poverty we are now experiencing.
Never knew there was e-poverty in the country.
We are becoming oblivious of that. But seriously,
yes,
seriously, I sincerely believe, like my colleague Deputy Minister said, they've had discussions with Ministry of Finance. Okay. And I have reason to believe that the Minister of Energy would have pushed some of these ideas.
Okay, so that they get heard. Now, there's a question though. I am transitioning because I want this question answered. I don't know if you released it on the floor of Parliament, you have recently been taking on regulatory institutions. You believe that they've not been functioning effectively and there's a problem with implementation of what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
Why are you singling out the NPA, the Standards Authority? There's another institution though.
Minerals Commission.
Minerals Commission.
Atiase happened after that.
Yes. So why do you think that these institutions are not almost fit for purpose anyway?
No, their impacts.
Yeah.
We have over 20 regulatory, maybe almost 50.
Some of them authorities on their own.
There's no difference between authority and commission.
Really?
There's absolutely, except that in the arena of natural resource, the Constitution says we must put commissions in place.
Yeah.
This is nomenclature.
I see.
There's no difference between authority. People just want to think they are more powerful. They are not.
Really?
Your power is defined by your act, what your act says you can do.
So you don't think they are doing their job?
I believe they could do their jobs better. And I single out MPA, I single out Petroleum Commission, I single out Minerals Commission, and because their work impacts more on the ordinary Ghanaian than some of the other regulatory bodies. How many Ghanaians travel by air?
Not many though.
Yeah, Civil Aviation Authority, Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, is a regulatory body. As important as they are, the activities will not impact at the same level as that of MPA on the ordinary Ghanaian. Their activities impact more on the middle classes.
There's a point you made. You said OMCs have very negligible fiscal presence on the ground, are lifting huge volumes of products, either with the connivance or negligence of the MPA. The incentive to do professional business in the sector is being eroded.
Yeah, absolutely. When we allow cowboys to thrive in a sanitized environment, the profitability needed to create the necessary investment will not be there. I am particularly concerned about this, probably because of where I have worked.
Okay.
At the time, the first two indigenous oil marketing companies still existing. Their licenses were signed by the then Minister for Mines and Energy, the late Fred Ohenekena, may his soul rest in peace. He signed their licenses. And at that time, I was also political assistant to the minister as well as being chief executive.
I see.
Yes, at that time, our philosophy, our objective was that let Ghanaian companies grow. Let's have a number of Ghanaian companies. Let's help them grow and let them take over the commanding heights of the economy. In other jurisdictions, you don't even have foreign companies in the downstream.
Because I'm wrapping up, you are just saying they are smoggling fuel. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not just saying they are smuggling fuel. Yeah. Smuggling canoes, taking them out of Ghanaian borders. Yeah. We're saying they are abusing the system.
Really?
A single sponsor has more than one OMC, oil marketing company. It should never have happened. It should never have been allowed to happen.
But you're not bold enough to name this one.
Oh, if I've named them in previous...
I've not heard you name any...
No. I am not...
I'm subjecting you to street proof. You need to give me something.
I will give you. give you.
But you have not mentioned...
There are letters from MPA. It's not everything you want to mention on television. I've mentioned them before. And I'm only not mentioning them today because the new chief executive at MPA...
Yes.
So he's tackling them and he had issues. And therefore, as we speak, in December, November, some OMCs have been investigated. I know that for a fact.
Oh, I see.
By MPA. And so, do you want to undermine the work of a regulatory body?
I think we will take each of these in our subsequent engagements.
Absolutely.
And go through them and actually peruse them. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on this show.
The pleasure is
mine. My guest was Dr. Kwamina Donko in studio, a former energy minister. He says he took us out of doing so. Power minister,
A former deputy minister. If you're bringing energy.
Yes, I want to. He actually says he took us out of doing so. Many disagree with him. But more importantly, a few. More importantly, the Minister Deputy for Energy also joined us on this conversation. Thank you so much. Join this Prime is up next.